control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains that act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and good to have you with us. If you're listening in at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, as well as on Revolution Radio. We welcome you to tonight's show as we broadcast out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin right here in the Great White North, live on this Friday night, early Saturday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast every night of the week because we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, conspiratorial, and so much more. If you like our music, you can thank the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, for helping us out with our theme music. Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. You can follow us on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. You can also find us on TuneIn, and now you can download our shows on iTunes as well. At this time, we say hello to everyone listening on the Revolution Radio chat room on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. Have you signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet? No? Well, it's time. It's only $5 a month. With that, you get access to private group areas for posting on our website, private group interviews, your name gets put into a monthly prize draw, and so much more. While at our website as well, you can also read our latest blogs, check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire and your latest weird news, and we have a new feature, the SOR Sightlines Report. It's right there for you. All you have to do is click on it. If you've had an experience and want it investigated by our researcher, Mike Schmidt, just fill out a Sightlines report. We'll get back to you ASAP. Remember, all information is 100% confidential. If you're a listener on Revolution Radio, it is the largest non-profit online radio station going. Take the time to visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Already it's the first Friday of the new month, as October is now in full swing. And the first Friday means it's time for one of our most popular guests, our Keith Andrews. Has been a staple of this show for the last 18 months or so. And the last time we had him on, he was kind enough to do it from Portland, Maine, attending the Experiencers Speak conference, where Don the Pleiadian showed up for the second year in a row. Keith, love him or hate him, is an interesting dude. He's got great hair as well. If you've never heard him before, you will literally think he's out to lunch. But for those who have studied experiences, and more importantly, those who have lived the experience, they can tell you that his information is eerily accurate. This isn't the life Keith chose. Obviously, he wouldn't want anyone to step into his shoes. But Keith knows this is his journey. Being a multiple alien contactee isn't easy. He's not only had to cope with these experiences and figure them out on his own, but there's also the public harassment and bullying that goes along with it. Honestly, Keith is one of the strongest people mentally I have ever had the opportunity to work with. The criticisms definitely outnumber the compliments. That's enough to beat anyone down to the brink of despair, but for Keith, he keeps on trucking. After all he's experienced, life really can't throw him any more hurdles. Keith, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. First of all, I want to start off by wishing you, Keith, and your family the most sincere condolences from all of us here at Spaced Out Radio Land, including your fans and listeners tuning in after losing your father recently.
Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it, and thanks for having me back again.
Keith, I really appreciate it, and you know, when you get people such as yourself who are dedicated to doing this show on a monthly basis, in reality, the thank you is all mine for you being able to do that. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, it's one of these journeys that, you know, nobody really chooses. I question just exactly, you know, how you got into this yourself. Although I know there was a wake-up call, you know, a number of months back to kind of put you on track and said, this is what you're doing whether you want to or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sort of the same mess I ended up in.
Mm-hmm.
But you are right. I didn't exactly choose this road so much as got handed it and told, you're on it. You know, I almost feel like I got kidnapped. Or abducted, one of the two.
Well, I mean, you've had both happen to you, my friend.
Well, sadly, yes, and that's a long story in and of itself. You know?
I do want to remind our listeners that if you have a question for Keith tonight, he is in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. So if you have a question, type it in capital letters. Keith will get to it on the fly as quickly as we possibly can. So, and he's also in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Do us the favor, type him in capital letters. If he misses one, I will fill it in for you. Keith, one of the topics that you and I have never talked about on this show is the fact of what you go through on a daily basis. And like I said in the intro, you didn't choose this life, and I don't think anybody actually would. How is this for you personally?
Well, yeah, I appreciate the question, and you are right. We never have really discussed it. It was so complicated for me to start with. I'm just trying to figure out how best to put it, because I spent a lot of years, well, I actually talked to an awful lot of different psychiatrists, psychologists, students of psychology, to figure out how to tell whether or not what I was going through, whether it was my imagination, whether I was just completely off my nut, you know, just exactly how it all fit together. Because when you take a look at the axiom that walking on the moon in 1960 was science fiction, and walking on the moon in 1969 was science fact, my life really does fit the bill of being science fiction. So when we look at how it affects me in simplest terms, I really do find it difficult to relate to what people around me are going through. You know, people that go, you know, their life is going normally, and like even amongst the abductees and the contactees, their life starts out relatively normal from everything I've talked to anybody about. You know, the worst case is 3 or 4 years old, they end up abducted, and then it stops. Or at least they're not really overly aware of it. In my case, it's been going on since quite literally while I was in utero. And yeah, oddly enough, I still remember that. That's another journey that was different. But trying to figure out how to cope with people, how to understand how people interact with each other, or why they do what they do, and still claim to actually care, you know, just completely throws me for a loop most of the time. You know, because it just doesn't add up properly. I question everything that I'm looking at. And, you know, especially when I know, for instance, I can see things that are happening, that are going to happen, and it's not a question of other people have to believe me, but I've run into a problem when people ask a question, and not of me, but of each other, and then totally ignore the answer. And then later, they come back, and especially when they've been talking to me about events that are taking place, like just, what was it, last year, I guess, people were talking and were really heavily into of the different starships and what have you. And I made a comment to somebody that there were, you know, three ships that had just rolled into the area. Well, everybody was basically telling me, no, that's not possible. You know, we've been watching and nobody knows that you can't be right. So of course I got called a lot of, shall we say, intriguing names. The following day, it was confirmed that NASA actually had 3 unidentified objects that had just come in outside of Pluto. And I'm sitting there going, you know, somebody says, well, where's your proof? And I keep telling people, I have the proof. I don't research the material. I live it. Somebody else is going to have to do the proving it, if you will. You know, so I keep running into a problem, and I find it very difficult. It's a real challenge not to go, if you will, back into, go back into hiding, go back into the reclusive state that I grew up in. Because you get fed up, quite frankly, trying to explain to people, yeah, I know these things are happening. I know that there are X number of races. In my case, I've dealt with over 40 of them. And I understand wholeheartedly that sounds like science fiction. It sounds absolutely bizarre. And yet, the unfortunate part is, when people ask me for proof, I look at them and go, well, wait 30 years, you'll get your proof, or do the research yourself. Because I just don't have a way of proving it. You know, back in the 70s, I mean, I was a child, and telling the doctors, you know, you'll never understand healing until such time as you start looking at the triple helix. Mm-hmm. And of course, they told me I was nuts. You know, and then in late 98, early 99, they discovered it. And this is just a norm for me. So I find it very difficult to quite seriously interact with people on a normal level, simply because people don't seem to, they ask questions, but most people don't want the answers. They want this world to be just the way it was. You know, they want the world to stay nice path, nice and easy. And it just doesn't work out that way. You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense. Keith, I'm having a little bit of Skype issue on this point. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play a little bit of a commercial here, and I want to try and get this sorted out because I don't want any more cutting out of the Skype right now. So I'm going to get you to hold on. Audience, you hold on as well. We're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to come out of the commercial break as early as I can, and we're going to try and get this Skype issue cleaned up right now, okay? We'll be right back.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you?
All right, we're going to come out of this. We're just going to get Keith back on board here. We're finally able to connect with Revolution Radio as well. Sorry about the little bit of a break there, Keith. Thank you so much. I just wanted to try and get everything back on board here. Yeah, you sound good, too. You're sounding better. So, I want to focus on you here for a little bit, Keith, because I don't think our audience or anybody who listens to these shows really understands everything that you go through on a daily basis. I'm not trying to make this a woe is me thing, Keith, but in reality, you take a lot of harassment for your own personal experiences, and nobody has stood in your shoes but you. How do you feel about that, and what goes through your mind? And more importantly, how do you stay sane when people who don't understand what you have gone through are right there to criticize you or to make fun of you or to bully you in some sort of way? I'm hearing that. I'm almost curious who it is now. Ah, yes. Damn person. Damn person. Let's shake our fists at them. All right. All right. We're just full of technical jargon tonight. Full of technical jargon. Yes, we do have Keith back.
Yeah.
And
I just unplugged
there
it.
you are. There you are. Well, you know me, I decided that when I got you back on, I decided that I wasn't going to turn your microphone on because I'm a jerk that way, apparently. You know, so, yeah.
Oh, so I've been talking, and you've been hearing me, but nobody
I've
else
been
has.
hearing you. The Revolution Radio side has been hearing you, but no one else has been hearing you. What a jerk I am. You know what? I apologize. That is my fault. This whole Skype thing kind of just threw me for a little bit of a rattle, and when you're doing as much as I do during the show, I do apologize for that happening. I really do. So please forgive me for that. You know, I try not to make that happen, but sometimes the human in me comes out. So
Hey, yeah, well, everybody has their flaws. You know,
Exactly. And all of a sudden I start getting all these notes, dead air, we can't hear Keith. And I'm like, oh, God, really? You know, anyhow, we're back up and running, and I'm trying to do too much at once here to catch up from everything, because when it doesn't go smooth, Keith, I get a little rattled. I'm not going to lie.
well, yeah, and I mean, understandably. We don't really have to recap. This is the joys of live radio. And, you know, for people, you ask how I deal with this, how do I stop from going nuts, the whole 9 yards. and it's really, the reason I mentioned to you that was kind of odd that you would put it that way. Literally, I got so fed up with everybody. And I mean, there was one person that didn't actually come right out and tell me he figured I was nuts. Of course, in his particular case, he's clinically diagnosed, so that may not necessarily help. But I got so fed up with it and so frustrated with people telling me I was out of my mind, I was schizophrenic, I was ADHD, bipolar. I actually went to a shrink. Just about 3 months ago now. I actually went to a shrink, and I was looking for anything that would indicate that that I was actually off my rocker. I mean, here I am, 53 years old. I've been going through this every day of my life. And so I went to a shrink. Now, it must be understood that the chap I went to talk to runs a clinical clinic. He runs a trial clinic. So I filled out probably an inch of paperwork that he had to go through, and he studied it for 3 weeks to a month, and then he calls me into the office. And he turns around and he says, look, before we get into this, he says, I need you to understand that I do run a trial clinic, so I do have access to to all the best drugs, all the newest medications. Now, the listeners have to understand, and I'm sure you'll get a kick out of this yourself, but this is a chap that if you say something wrong to, he can lock you up in a Huckabee jacket and throw away the key. And he turned around and he goes, Keith, what do you think of medication? And I looked and he says, I need an honest opinion. I says, look, when you humans get it through your minds that the double helix is not the answer and does not answer all the questions, and the triple helix does not have a bunch of junk DNA. Get it through your thick skulls that the triple helix is where your answers are for the healing of the human genome. Maybe I'll talk to you about medication. And the guy looked at me just absolutely bizarre, and he cocked his head and he goes, well, you're right about the triple helix, so we're just not going to talk to you about medication anymore. Now, when I got thinking about it afterwards, that simple comment, I mean, let's face it, Dave, if you were the one that was asking that question and you had the ability, if you will, the responsibility to lock somebody up, right? And I made a comment like that to you, what would be your first thought?
Oh, goodness. That's putting me on the spot here, my friend. That is putting me right on the spot. You know, the one thing that I can say is this. Science doesn't know everything, the medical field doesn't know everything, and we really have to take these cases on an individual basis because, let's face it, the honest answer to that, Keith, is there are a lot of schizophrenic, bipolar people who have extremely either A, overactive imagination so real that they believe it, or B, that they just cannot control their own mental state. We do recognize there is health problems mentally out there, and I think you can agree on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. So I think the fact that science and the medical field, whether it's psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, I think they are too quick these days to put what they learned in a book onto people. And I'll give you an example with that, Keith. Kind of exactly with what you were saying. My daughter, whom you've met, suffers from anxiety and depression. And unfortunately, she inherited that from me. And that's something that kicks up my own anxiety and depression, knowing that she got that from me. But the whole point that I'm getting at is I made the mistake, okay? And some people who have heard this story before on this show will say, oh, it wasn't a mistake, but I think it was. I made the mistake one day when I had a phone conversation with her counselor. And my daughter is clairvoyant. And I said to the counselor, and here's my mistake, has my daughter ever talked to you about seeing dead people? And the counselor had a long, pregnant pause, and she goes, that's something we're probably going to want to check out and get her on medication for right away.
Oh.
And I said, here's my response. I said, no, you won't. I said, that's a trait that runs in the family, and maybe instead of learning what you did in a textbook for diagnosis, maybe you should read some other books to see what else you can learn about gifted people.
That would be an idea. Nicely done.
Right? And I said, you will not be putting my daughter on medication for something that is a gift that has been handed down. And she just shut right up. Right? Because when it comes to people such as yourself, my daughter, and other people who are gifted or have had these experiences, it's amazing to me how the scientific or the medical community does not want to take any of these experiences to heart. They don't want to take them to task. They want to immediately say, we're dealing with psychosis and we need to get you on drugs ASAP so you're not flipping out. So basically turn you into a human vegetable.
Yeah, but they don't want to give you the good drugs. They want to give you the poisons. I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
Go right ahead.
The sad part is, you take a look at that, and I question daily whether or not I'm completely off my nut, because I keep seeing these things, and, it gets really complicated when every time you talk to people, they're missing the point, or they tell you, no, that isn't the way it works. And I'm going, but I haven't changed. The shrink I went and talked to, he turned around and he looks at me at the end of it and he goes, well, he says, this is a real Reader's Digest situation. He got to the end of our discussion and he says, I know you need a final diagnosis, before you walk out of here. So here it is. He says, you've got more energy than I've heard of in virtually anybody. But, he says, Keith, it was a real pleasure meeting you. He goes, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you mentally. Yes, you've got a temper problem, but it seems to only be triggered by stupid people. So, your final diagnosis is, it was nice meeting you. Go home, have a great life, and stay away from stupid people. And good luck with that.
Yeah. And I understand that. And Keith, I know we're kind of getting off the whole topic here because I didn't want to spend this much time on it. But how do you react to people who, especially on social media, where the vengeance and the vile and the vitriol can be so pathetically rude? How do you respond to the criticism that you have received? Because over the last 2 years, since you met Dawn the Pleiadian at the Experiencers Conference in Portland, Maine in 2015, you have taken a lot of heat publicly, online and in forums and everything. And I know this for a fact because I got dragged into it and I had to go to war verbally by getting my fingers going on the keyboard to defend you and your stories and what you believe. How do you defend yourself, or do you even bother anymore?
Well, in all fairness, up until my father passed, or more to the point, about 2 weeks before he passed, it was a real challenge because it used to absolutely throw me off track. And I would, quite seriously, I came home, I just about didn't go back to the conference this year because, and I know you can relate to this one, I sunk into a real heavy depression. If there's one thing that gets under my skin and really hurts, it's when people tell me I'm lying to them or that I'm a con man, right? I don't mind people telling me I'm not. I've had enough shrinks tell me I'm not, that I can work around that one. But the unfortunate part is that it used to be really into a real black depression, almost to the point of shutting down everything. And when my mom and dad came to me just a couple of weeks before my father passed, and both told me that, number one, they both going through with real because my story doesn't change. Even, as my mom put it, even when she and dad tried to coerce me into changing my perspective, I wouldn't change a word of it. And, dad turned around and apologized. And I said, well, you know, apologized for not being clear with me right from the get-go, but that he couldn't. Now I look at it when people tell me that I'm I'm going to answer Char's question right away here. Char in Spreaker has asked, do you think aliens have messed with your thinking, telling you things to manipulate? In other words, unless I misunderstand, am I actually being controlled? And you know, it's a very viable question, and it's one that I have thought about for, quite frankly, decades. You know, is there something so far off kilter that somebody's telling me what to do? Well, if they are, they're screwing it up really badly. I used to get the same question about whether Satan was, you know, whether I was doing Satan's work. Basically the same idea. And the answer is, if they are messing with my thinking and telling me things to manipulate mankind, then they are doing a very poor job of it, because I keep telling people on both sides of the board, and what I mean by that is both humans and non, that there are good humans, there are bad humans, there are good and bad aliens, but the reality is they're all the same. And if they're working to manipulate you people through me, then what they're trying to do is get everybody to wake up and be honest with each other and treat each other decently and start taking responsibility for your own actions. You know, so if that's the kind of manipulation that they're aiming for, where they want me to manipulate people and to modify their thinking so wars stop and people work together and people start accepting people for whatever color they are, whatever race, whatever sexual orientation. Well, if that's what they're doing to manipulate, that's great. And I guess technically you could say it's working. But if you're wondering, you know, yeah, as John in Spreaker puts it, to grow up. You know, if most people, when they talk about manipulation, it's to side either with the aliens or with the humans, depending on who I'm talking to. And frankly, I won't side with either one. You know, the reality is that I am very much against war. I'm very much against conflict. I see no difference between the person on the street that, you know, that huddles underneath a newspaper and the person that has a multi-million-dollar house. They're still the same people. I don't care if they fly a starship or not. They're still looking for the same sorts of things. And the problem I run into, the biggest challenge for me, is I keep having these conversations with people. I was talking to a group of, and in all fairness, I don't know if they were Jehovah's Witness or if they were Mormon. But essentially, during the conversation, they admitted that the Bible had been corrupted by man for man's own uses, but they were still going to follow the Bible and let God sort out the mess. You know, and like I looked at it, and, you know, like I told them, I says, you know, people that worry about God or worry about the aliens trying to take over or what have you, and in this case, they were telling me about God and all of this, and I'm like, okay, let's understand. I do believe in God. I believe he's very loving, the whole 9 yards, and call him what you will. God, Buddha, Allah, Shiva, Earth, I don't care. But the way they laid it out, their belief was that God is an extremely jealous, extremely violent man when you tick him off. And what they just finished telling me, the way it came across, was that man took the rules, changed them to his own liking, and now is deliberately doing whatever he pleases. Well, that's akin to having a violent alcoholic parent or sibling or whatever, and going, I know this person's going to get mad, but I'm going to go out of my way to tick him off anyway. You know, and I'm like, really? Like, how can you do that? Now, the issue of how I deal with the whole thing, I look at it and go, is it technically possible that I'm being manipulated? Yes. But some of the conversations I've sat in on, that people have been involved in, I was sitting having a conversation with a number of people that are admitted abductees, contactees. And we were in contact with one of the, we were in contact with actually the High Council of one race in particular. And I was told point blank before going into the conversation that I needed to show these people respect. And my immediate reaction was, well, if they want my respect, they better get their head out of the sand and quit being such a bunch of doorknobs and picking fights with people they can't beat. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And of course, they just looked at me and went, you're being extremely disrespectful. I said, no, I'm being extremely honest. You just don't like the fact I don't agree with you, and I don't see them as being anything special. I don't see people, I mean, you know, everybody is special in their own way. Like, for instance, Dave, you run a radio show. Now,
yes.
Okay, this is just, I mean, it's pretty black and white. Okay. And I ran a radio show. I used to actually have my own radio show, my own radio station, the whole 9 yards. I tried it for a few months and could not keep it straight. So, I mean, my hat goes off to you. That's a talent I don't want to tangle with again. Okay. And, you know, the whole issue around it is what I do, I didn't learn how to do by going to a school. I didn't learn by somebody sitting down and saying, here's the tricks of the trade. You know, I noticed somebody in here, love energy, as somebody's brought it up, but about a movie. And the sad part about it is I was actually by Hollywood about a year ago to tell my life story. And I told them what they could do with the contract because they wanted to be able to fictionalize it and me have nothing to do with it. You know, having nothing to say about it. So I told them if they wanted to make up their own story, they didn't need my face. And of course, they dangled a huge number, and I'm like, that really doesn't matter. You know, I'll take the money, but I'm not about to turn around and alter it just for your ratings.
Keith, I want to get to some questions here. When we were talking about, when Shar asked about whether or not you were, you know, they, as in the extraterrestrials, were manipulating you, there's a follow-up question to that. Do you believe then that maybe the people around you are the ones who are manipulated and changing your frequency?
You know, in all fairness, that is potentially possible. Okay. That's possible. Did it have any bearing on what I was doing? The answer is no. It really didn't have any functional bearing at all from my perspective. So, is it possible others were being manipulated? Certainly. Could have been by off-worlders, could be by humans, you know, the whole 9 yards. I just don't have any way of personally telling you whether or not they specifically were, but it certainly wouldn't be a shock. Has it had any bearing on my outlook? No, but it certainly had some bearing on my social life.
Next question comes from Shar, kind of a follow-up. She says, she asked that because she was wondering, because we are learning government manipulates and experiments with people, so I thought maybe they are with friends as well.
And in all fairness, she's absolutely right. There's something that and this one gets to be a little bit of a difficult subject, but there's something called MyLab, military laboratories, and they absolutely do horrendous things. I would love to be able to explain some of it in more detail, but then again, I think we're supposed to be keeping this to at least generally acceptable. And let me put it mildly. I remember very clearly 197 of my good friends being murdered and tortured in front of my eyes. Okay, by MyLab. Now, do I have any way of proving it? Of course not. We're talking military. You know, so do they do horrendous things? You bet. I know of countless cases where people have been abducted, where they have been manipulated, where they've been threatened with their very life, right? And those that haven't paid attention have, well, shall we say, shortened their lifespan up rather drastically. You know, so, I mean, you're certainly looking at manipulation and threats being a real thing. I mean, heck, I myself walked out of the morgue at 5 years old. So, you know, it's not like I haven't been there. Although, it does give you a different outlook on death. On death.
Right. I want to get to another question here. This one from Claudia. Claudia is asking, Keith, have you had any new information from any extraterrestrials that you could share with us? It's a two-part question. I'll let you get to that first part first.
Well, the biggest one that I've actually, this isn't so much a new piece, but it was reiterated the other day. There were so many people, because these guys do watch the political goings on, okay? Don't forget, they are trying to get people to pay attention to each other. They're trying to get this planet to work on, and I know this is going to cause you flack, so I'll apologize, but they're trying to encourage people to put a global government together. Okay. And people have this great big fear of a global government, and oh my gosh, we'll lose all of our freedoms and it'll be a terrible place. Well, if you think back, mankind grew up in caves. When you go way back in history, mankind was living in caves. Well, mankind still lives in caves. The only difference is they now build their own. And in order for this planet to come to a peaceful solution, let's face it, you take a look at any city next to you. I mean, take the cities right close to you. It used to be, if you were within 15 miles of a city, of another community, you could have a conflict. Now we have cities in the millions. We have countries with billions of people living in them that don't fight with each other on the whole. So clearly, a global government is not going to wipe the planet out. It's not going to take away people's individuality, not if it's done right. Every one of the community of the races that has gotten successfully off the planet has done so by work, not by trying to kill each other. Although, in all fairness, they keep trying to, and they're just not succeeding in all,
Okay, the next part to that question then is, what have they told you specifically that has blown your mind? Is it time travel, parallel universes, portals?
That blew my mind?
Yes.
I guess, the biggest thing, and it wasn't so much it blew it, so much as confirmed it, but I'd always held time travel was possible, but backwards time travel was not. And I had a young gentleman sit down with me, one gentleman simply because he was male, and he explained to me the reason that you can't go back in time. You can go forward. It is very possible to jump forward in time. You know, people talk about time being, you know, it's changeable, et cetera, et cetera. And in all fairness, it's not really. Today is the only day you can do anything, but what they did was they explained in terms that made total sense to me, but I'm thinking that transtemporal reconfiguration is going to be a little bit beyond most of your readers, or listeners, if you will. Okay, but they explained the actual energetic reason why time travel cannot be done backwards, but you can go back and look. Same as you can go back to your own photo albums and look at something that happened, but you can't do a thing about it. And that I just looked at them and went, okay, that makes sense. Now, how do I get that across to the people that think it's possible? You know, along the lines of when they showed me how gravity actually works, I'm like, well, it's no wonder people are having trouble with anti-gravity. They're doing it backwards. Like, they've got the right idea. You know, so the hardest part of all of it, when I really came to start to, and this goes way back, quite frankly, decades, when it dawned on me that the off-world is really no different than mankind, aside from they've got better toys. You know, they've got advanced technologies, they understand different things a little bit more clearly, but ultimately they are the same as humans. They want a shelter over their head, they want their families to be safe, they want food on the table, and most importantly, they want respect. Now, ironically enough, the reason I keep using the term want, which is quite frankly counterproductive, is because when you want something, you create a sense of an energy of wanting, an energy of lack. And what people have to realize when they choose to actually change the way they're doing things is that it's what you desire and what you choose to work towards that's going to make the difference, not what you sit there complaining about. You know, that was one of the biggest challenges, was realizing that off-worlders with all their technology still, like when I had to go out to the black hole, and I know this sounds like science fiction, when I had to go to the black hole and recover two battleships from the edge of the black hole, and I was kind enough, I took somebody with me, like another human that happens to still be on this planet.
Is that Charles Stansberg?
Yes. And, you know, I literally told them, look, you know, these guys are so, Strazazians are so bound on the issue of honor, and they're stronger than people, etc. And I looked at them and I told them flat out, I said, you guys are so afraid of what's going on that you're going to let your own people die, then sit here and I'll go deal with it myself. And frankly, I did. You know, which surprised the heck out of everybody. But the sad part about it, I woke up in pain. You know, I came back in pain. But it's a real difficult challenge to realize that the person across the street from you, or across the road from you, or right next door, they may have better toys than you. They may have more money than you. But they're still just as valuable as you. I think that
Joe brings up a good point in the SOR Space Travelers Club. He says humans do some good things.
Absolutely. They do some incredible things. You know, I keep saying all of our advancements are ET related. Well, they're not. HARP, for instance, is man-made. That was not done by the off-worlders. That was designed by man. It's it's a first-generation atmospheric generator. Yes, the people use it are a little bit dense in some ways, but how are they supposed to learn to control something if they're not going to learn to, if they don't figure out how it actually damages things? You know, that's because the reality is it's easier to break something. It's easier to destroy than it is to create. Okay. And, you know, the reality is the biggest issue that people have to realize is mankind, ironically enough, has two massive qualities that both make them extremely beneficial to the galactic consortium, to the whole interaction up there. One is mankind's ability to take an absolutely logical situation, take a completely retarded approach to it, and still come out on top. Okay, that's the first one. Mankind can bypass logic and still see. The other issue is mankind can access an energy that the other races just don't get. Okay, mankind can manipulate. I've heard it called a number of different things, but mankind can manipulate the energy that binds material. And when people realize that working together, peace on this planet is possible, okay, and they just need to believe in the possibility of it, that's when things will change. I mean, like John in SOR is mentioning, he says, it's not the ETs we should fear. I think it's our own people, the elites who treat us as though we're worthless. How did you escape the MyLabs? Well, guess I didn't realize that was a question on top of it. Here's the reality. The elites, the so-called elites, just a curiosity question, Dave. In your eyes, why do you think everybody thinks they're elites?
I think the human nature and the human way is we always have to try and put a title on something. Okay, we all want that title for self-importance. We all want that that vision of being higher than what we are. I know a guy personally, Keith, who was offered working for a minor league hockey team. He was offered a position that paid $7,000 more a year. But because the other position at the lower salary chose or had the title of manager on it, he chose the lower salary because he was a complete title person. And I really strongly believe that people are addicted to the title. They think that it gives them some sort of authority or step up on someone, and I think that's basically what it is.
And in a lot of ways, that's very much the case. We can actually boil it down to a real simple issue. We got
about a minute and a half, just so you know.
We have people that are so-called elites because everybody keeps telling them they're elites. Frankly, they're no better. They have more money, they've got more political power because more people listen to them. But it doesn't mean they're any better. But that's where the elite issue comes from. I know we're heading out, so I'm just going to mention Joe's got a comment here about bashing humans that I want to deal with as soon as we get back from break.
Absolutely. And we got another question from John in the SOR Space Travelers we have to get to as well. We got about 90 seconds here before we have to go on the air, about 60 seconds, really. I tell you, it's amazing. Every time I make a little pit stop on the clock, all of a sudden it just seems to stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been 9:54 for like 5 minutes now, and it actually just changed over after I called it out. So, Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing with time. You can sit there staring. That's where the concept never, a watched pot never boils. It's not so much it never does, but I'll tell you, it sure seems to take a lot longer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just the way it flies sometimes. That's just the way it flies. We got to get into some alien talk as well in the next hour, because in reality, that's kind of why we bring you on. We like the alien talk around here. That's what I think.
Yeah, and we will, like I said, I'll deal with Joe and the other question, and then we will get straight into some of the more, shall we say, odd connections.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and we'll get to your questions as well. Remember, if you're in one of the Space Out Radio chat rooms, whether you're on Spreaker, on Facebook, or on Revolution Radio, make sure you type in your questions in capital letters. We'll be right back right after this break.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, hour number 2 with R. Keith Andrews, the ET Experience coming right up. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Elizabeth Anglin and James Tyson are in for Spaced Out Weekend, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. I will be back on Monday night, and for all our Canadians listening in, happy Thanksgiving to you. We do it in the first long weekend, the first month, or make that the first weekend of October. So thank you so much, all our Canadians, and blessings to you and your family. I will be at my parents' house. I'm going on a little bit of a road trip right after this show, so I won't be hanging out with you guys from the wilderness in the cave. I'm actually going to eat turkey this weekend because Mom's making it, and I'm going to go pig out. Remember, if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, it is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor. Donate today at freedomslips.com. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight. The SOR Space Traveler's password is Asomatus. Asomatus is your password. What it means, I have no idea. Bill always tries to throw me off, but Asomatus is your password. I think I actually pronounced this one right, so I'm going to give myself a high five. There we go. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download us on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. With that, you get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website. Your name gets put into monthly prize draws and so much more. We're going to give you a heck of a lot more than just access to our archives. At our website, you can also read the SOR Spacewire by our news director, Eric Markham. You can check out our recent blogs. They're written every week as well. If you have a sighting that you just can't explain or an experience you can't explain, fill out the SOR Sightlines report. Our investigator, Mike Schmidt, will get back to you ASAP and investigate it for you. All your information is 100% confidential. Our Keith Andrews is back with us for the second hour. He'll be here for hour number 3 as well. The ET Experience is done the first Friday of every month. Keith, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to the listeners that are still hanging with us. The ones that are joining us.
There's a lot of people in tonight. It's a nice Friday night. Hey, Joe has a comment, and I think there's some validity to it. He says, I'm a little tired of hearing about how wonderful our space brothers are. Most people have said that, but even they don't get along with each other. It's just nature. Stop bashing the humans, Keith.
Well, and I can understand the point. The ironic part of it is I see the same thing happening with the off-worlders. We talk about, I talk about the differences, and part of the reason that I keep talking to people about what humans are doing that is bass-ackwards, aside from the fact it is because trying to explain that, first of all, if the off-worlders were so nice, if it was just all hunky-dory up there and everybody was just lovey-dovey, etc., there wouldn't be 2 massive wars and 1 civil war going on in our solar system that don't involve humans, aside from a few volunteers. You don't have a civil war amongst a race that isn't human if they're all getting along. You don't end up with conflicts if everybody gets along. But the reality is that when you're dealing with somebody, with people, I take a look at, we keep talking in extreme generalities because we're talking about so many different races all at the same time. And that becomes a little problematic. So let's narrow it down and just talk about one race in particular. The race that I've dealt extensively with is the Trezasians, which are extremely honorable, extremely respectful, but they are militarily devastating. Now, when people, and I will say when humans say, oh, we'll just defend ourselves against them, when you think about the size, just look at standard weaponry. Trying to defend, when humans get this idea that they'll just defend themselves, it's kind of like saying the Congolesian pygmies will stop the United States from doing whatever it wants, or the Canadian government for doing what it wants. They don't have the capacity. Now, this does not mean that humans are a bad race. Humans are, by galactic standards, a very young race. But they are one of the most curious and most driven races available. So do I have a lot of respect for people, for humans themselves? Absolutely, on the whole. I find it fascinating that so many people go, we can't do this, or we can't do that. Mankind does that to themselves. So does every other race. But mankind has managed, with all of its wars, to still create one of the fastest growing new civilizations available. Mankind is already off the planet. They didn't do that because of off-worlders. They did that because of their own ability to take a piece of equipment and modify it to their own liking, to their own use. The neat part about it is that when you take a look at the human race, you have to understand they were built for war to start with. It's no wonder they're an aggressive species. They're also children. By galactic standards, we're dealing with 2-year-olds, meaning they're a bit temperamental, they're pushy, they're energetic, they're creative beyond belief. And that actually is one of the things that has many of the off-world races worried. Because mankind will take the most bizarre setup, and by luck, by intuition, by instinct, who knows, there's so many different ways to do it, and they'll figure out how to make something work that the off-worlders can't figure out. that they just haven't gotten it. You know, so, you know, mankind, in my eyes, mankind, just to be clear, is on exactly the same footing as the Draconians, as the Greys, as the Pleiadians, as any one of the races, even as far as the what people call the demons, the angels, the elementals. They're all on the same footing in my eyes. Many of these races, I remember them evolving. Now, I know how that sounds. And, you know, so I don't look down on any one of the races. Individuals, I certainly look at with, shall we say, in some cases, a whole lot less impression, you know, less agreement, if you will, than what I do with other individuals. But we're not talking other races. We're talking individual people.
Let's get to a couple of questions here.
Absolutely.
And we'll get to John's question right now. He's saying, it's not the ETs we should fear, I think. It's our own people, the elites who treat us like we are worthless. Keith, how did you escape the MyLabs?
Well, ironically, it was because I was murdered, and the Strazazians, as near as I can piece together, put me back in the morgue where I reconnected with my parents. Quite literally, that's how it was done. The people in my lab, from everything I've pieced together, did not like the speed that my abilities were growing. They couldn't control my attitude, and they couldn't control the way I looked at the world. And therefore, they had me terminated. And yes, I'm sitting here telling you, and I've told the same story, I can't tell you how many times. I was quite deliberately murdered by injection, and I'm sitting here today to talk about it, which goes to show you it didn't work out quite the way they were planning. They haven't had me, well, I shouldn't say they haven't had me back in there, but basically it boiled down to they have done everything possible to isolate me. And of course, in all fairness, I cooperated in a lot of ways because I couldn't deal with people. I couldn't deal with the hypocrisy of it all. So I backed up. You know, and I backed away from people, and I literally stopped talking to people for, quite frankly, probably 20 years, aside from if somebody would want to talk to me, if they could find me, I didn't exactly hide, but I would only talk to them if they were carrying the conversation. What I do here, this is not the way I was. But ultimately, that's quite literally how I got out.
Mm-hmm. I'm just getting to another question here. This one from Claudia. Do you think extraterrestrials travel by thought? Can they manifest their thoughts instantaneously?
The answer is yes. Absolutely. Mankind used to. But, and, that's a complicated problem. But yes, some of the off-worlders can travel by thought. They can physically manifest in another world. Okay. And essentially it's instantaneous. Much like, even if we look at TV, right? TV, radio, ultimately it's what amounts to instantaneous. I say something, you hear it on the other side of the planet. Same idea. There's no difference between a planetary broadcast and a universal broadcast.
And we'll get to the next part of her question from Claudia. She is saying, how do their bodies adapt to entering other dimensions? Can they dematerialize purposefully? How do they cloak themselves? And can they teach us how to do it?
Okay, well, this is one that's an interesting situation. Something that's got to be understood, and I have yet to be able to convince people, even the scientists, I have yet to be able to convince them of this one. It's not a question of them being in a different dimension. Everything that is in existence, that is capable of being sensed in this world, in what we call reality right now, all of it is all of third dimensional origin. All of it. Much of it vibrates at a different level, but it's the same dimension. It's just moving faster. Now, with that in mind, first, before I go any further, does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Roll on.
Now, with that in mind, how they disappear is by accelerating their vibratory rate. Simplest way of looking at it, hold your hand in front of your face. Anybody that's listening in can do this. You put your hand in front of your face and move it as fast as you can someplace else. You'll lose track of it. You won't be able to see it in between, or it'll become very blurry. In between location A and location B. That's how they vanish. They modify their vibratory rate. Now, there is a secondary trick that some of the races have, where they can actually modify, if you will, the vibratory rate of the air around them, or of the optical, because of the change in vibration, they can alter the way that the light travels as far as around them goes, so they appear to disappear, if you will. Of course, the ones that can lower their density, which again is a technique that some of them have, you can walk right through them and you won't notice, because they have lowered their density to the point that your molecules will pass between theirs. The reality of what people call solid is only solid because it's vibrating at the same rate as what the other things around it are. That's why it's solid. So, and the answer to the other part of the question, can they teach it? Absolutely. Of course, the catch there is if you don't believe it's possible, you're going to have a heck of a time getting it done. That doesn't mean you have to believe it's been done. You just have to believe in the possibility in order to work forward from it.
Galen has a question to an earlier comment you were making about extraterrestrials and Earth. Do you believe that extraterrestrials actually own Earth?
No. Not in the sense you're talking about, that she's talking about. Earth was built by off-worlders, quite frankly, for lack of a better way of putting it. The people that built the planet were spirit in form, and that's the best way I can put it for humans, in all fairness, and quite frankly for most races. It was built with the purpose of spiritual entities taking a physical form on this planet and learning to live as a family unit. Family being defined as two adults of whatever race, whatever gender, two adults living under one roof and raising as many people as they chose between them. People being any race, any gender. That was the whole purpose of it, was to come here and experience a limited life, a physical existence in a physical world. The planet itself, it's not so much it belongs to them, because people, when people talk about belonging, who owns it, that usually insinuates, and I might be reading more into this, but it usually insinuates they've got the right to tell people what to do, or they've got the right to evict the race if they want. And that is not the way they think. The people that actually built this planet weren't building it as a way of controlling people. It was a way of giving people freedom to experience the physical world in an incredible environment, in an incredibly diverse environment, and it's also a staggering record book. You know, this is a phenomenal library that humans were supposed to be the caretakers of. They weren't supposed to poison the place. But the planet itself does not belong to somebody by human definition.
Let's move on here. Claudia has another question. She's saying, Keith, if you had a friend who wants to meet an extraterrestrial, would the off-worlders come and meet that friend?
Best I can put it is I've had it. It has happened. Okay. Quite frankly, Charles was one such person. However, it's not me that makes the decision. All I do is go, this is what somebody wants. You know, this is what somebody's voicing. But the problem with that is most people, the Reader's Digest answer is, I will let appropriate people know, and then it's up to that particular race or that particular group to decide if they're going to do it. But understand that one of the complications is many people that go, I really want to meet an extraterrestrial, are not mentally or emotionally ready to meet an extraterrestrial, even though they think they are. Many of the people that go, I want to meet an extraterrestrial, are frankly afraid of meeting their neighbor. It was said once in actually the original Star Trek series. It was originally said very succinctly by Spock, where he said, sometimes the wanting, or sometimes the having, is not so pleasing as the wanting. And what that means is people want to have this bizarre experience. They want to meet these off-worlders. And yet many of them can't actually handle, even though we're talking some very, very mentally strong people that just can't handle dealing with something that is definitively and clearly off-world. You know, so what I do is I go, this is a person that I know of that would like to meet, right? And, of course, we end up with the conversation of my personal opinion as to whether or not I feel they're ready. And if I feel they're ready, and, of course, somebody out there is going to go, well, what makes you so special? You know, that's a long story. But if I feel that they're ready or that they're able to deal with it, then it then becomes up to not only the race, but up to the council as to whether they're going to do it. Can I guarantee it for anybody? Not a prayer.
Galen has an incredible question in the SOR Space Travelers Club. She is asking, Keith, have you ever met any Earth humans living on other planets?
Oddly enough, the answer is yes. That was actually, you know, I ran into, when I first went to the Srazazian homeworld, they already had humans living there. They weren't kidnapped, okay, because these guys don't deal in slavery by any stretch. They were there on, if you will, a cultural exchange program. There are many humans I've met that, quite frankly, they're human, but they are not born on this planet. They're born of humans, they're purely human, but they're not born on this planet.
That's a powerful thought, Keith.
Yes. And probably going to get all sorts of complications.
How would they get how would they get citizenship coming back?
I'd love to give you an answer to that.
But that's a serious question. If you're born on Mars, for instance, and let's say your parents are American, are you American?
Well, the good news there, according to, as far as I understand it, dealing with the states itself, as far as I understand it, the fact that their parents are American makes them American. Now, that's only one state. There are...
Yes, but you still have to declare where you're born.
Yep. Which ought to be entertaining. But do understand, especially when we're dealing with humans and governments and what have you, quite frankly, think about it. How often does the government make up a name for somebody for what they call the Witness Protection Program? It's not that hard to get them back in if you've got the right contacts, and rest assured, if your parents gave birth to you on Mars and you're trying to get back onto Earth, you've got some pretty heavy-duty contacts.
Yes, true. Let's move on. Mario has a question in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. He is asking, Keith, can you please describe the Thesaurian for the new people in the chat?
Oh, Storzosians. They are your 7.5 to 8.5 foot reptilian. 3 fingers and a thumb, 3 toes, topped off in a heavy, like in a very heavy talon. They grow their own armor, much like people grow skin. These guys grow armor, and then they wear armor on top of it. They do have a colored band around their throat that they use for communication purposes when they're on their home planet, because of the deadly atmospheric conditions that make it impossible for most people to be outside. Humans can't survive on their planet. They are, when we talk about musculature, think of it this way. They do come from a high-gravity planet. But when it comes to their strength, most people know what a mace from the Middle Ages is. Basically, it's a 2-pound ball of steel on the end of a stick. In one of the melee weapons, which is what that's called, that Trezosians use, is it's very much like a mace. It's a great big ball of essentially steel on a stick. It's not made of steel, but the point being, it's the size of a medicine ball. Their talons are razor sharp, and I've seen them do some pretty horrendous things to people. But in a combat situation. But the reality behind it is they are extremely honor bound. They grew up, evolved through a military regime that, frankly, nearly wiped them out. And subsequently, much as they are military-based, they don't go looking for a fight. Okay. They do have their belief in gods, their belief in family. They, in all fairness, they really don't know one child, what they call a hatchling, do not know who the parents are, because they are born by egg. Okay, all eggs are thrown into a nursery, into a hatchery, and therefore there is no way, without doing without doing a genetic breakdown, and they really have no interest in it, of figuring out who the actual birth parents are. But that is, from their standpoint, their culture says children are raised by everybody. They are not just raised by one parent. They're raised by the entire, not just community, but by the entire civilization. So when they have, like they've got their schools, the whole thing. But when, for instance, when they get promoted into a new position or elected into a position where it comes to the political side, anybody can ask them to step down, can say, you're not doing a good job, you need to step down. Now, they do have two options. One, they can argue the point, and there will be a vote, and if they're told by vote that they need to step down, then they either step down or they get killed on the podium. And I know that sounds brutal, but it works. If they step down, they can step back. Like, for instance, if you get promoted into a management position of a company, you were doing great as a assistant manager, but you get moved into a management position and that backfires, you can't do the job. They see no harm, they see no shame in stepping out of that job and moving back into an assistant manager where they were doing their job properly and carrying on. They recognize different stations, as in this person has this rank or this person has this position and therefore has different rights. But they don't see each other as being different, as being better or worse. The other issue, of course, there are some pretty, shall we say, graphic differences as far as their belief in life and death. But they don't devalue life. In their eyes, it really boils down to, if you're capable of pulling your weight, of helping out in society, then away you go. If you're not physically capable of doing it, and this is where many people will be very unhappy with, my own son, my own son in Srazazian culture would have been terminated because he's not physically capable of pulling his own weight. Okay. And in their eyes, if you're physically damaged or if you're mentally damaged to the point you cannot pull your own weight, then frankly, you need to be put out of your misery and you need to be removed as a burden. Okay, and I know that sounds cold, but like I said, my own son would fall into that. Okay, and so from their standpoint, they look at that and they go, that's just normal. That's how they grow up. They're born knowing, and automatically, when they first get born, when they first hatch, once they're out, the moment a shell breaks and the Srazazian calls for help, the other hatchlings automatically know to go over and help try and break the shells open and pull these kids out. Okay, that's the way they're born. And then they get, once they're up and mobile and can move on their own, they get moved into the next stage. Now that is in direct contrast to another reptilian race, the Teklegs, which they also are raised in, they are also born in hatcheries, but the second one of them breaks out, they will immediately try and eat the other eggs. So needless to say, they get moved a lot quicker. Okay. But Reader's Digest version, that is a very simple description of what you're dealing with. And yes, some of the larger Srazazians do have tails, and the absolutely huge ones have actually, some have been known to grow wings. But that's because they're descended from drakes.
Let's get to another question here. And this one comes from Mario. He is asking, Keith, when it comes to the extraterrestrials, actually, I'll get to Donna's question first and Mario's. I'll ask him at the same time. Donna is asking, do they have any problems with inbreeding as extraterrestrials? And number two, with Mario, he is asking, how long is the egg in its mother's womb for before it exits?
Okay, well, first of all, as far as the inbreeding goes, I guess the best way I can put it is no, because of the numbers. I mean, inbreeding happens when you've got a limited population. Okay, so what ends up happening with, like, when you take a look at humans, for instance, when inbreeding happens, you end up with physical malformations. Okay, and that's just a genetic reality. It happens with animals as well. Okay, it happens with every race. The reason it doesn't get out of hand with the Strassosians in specific is because if you are born with a malformation, you're terminated. You don't end up, it's not a question of you're forbidden to breed, you're not alive long enough to breed. Okay. That's the reality of it from that standpoint. Now, the other issue, when you're talking about how long the egg sits in utero, as it were, inside the womb, you're looking at less than 6 months. 6 months is a long time. Usually, it's only somewhere between 3 and 4. The egg takes longer, but it gets released while it's still soft. It hardens up after it's dropped.
And let's get to Joe's question. Does Sasquatch and extraterrestrials hide in our blind spots, and are they connected?
Well, the answer to both would be yeah. They certainly hide in blind spots or manipulate the environment. As for are they connected, well, that is one where there's a number of researchers and I that will certainly not get along. Sasquatch Sasquatch grew up on Earth. Okay, Gigantropithecus, one step prior to Neanderthal. Okay. So, do they hide in the blind spots? Certainly. Do they know how to manipulate do they know how to hide in shadow in the trees and what have you, so you don't notice them? You bet. Their camouflage ability is phenomenal. Are they off-worlders, as some researchers have suggested? No. However, there is another race, the Wada, which are an off-world race, and they do look similar to Sasquatch, except for the fact they're not the same height, but they know how to modify that appearance too. But are they related? No. From everything I've come to know, they aren't.
So you don't tend to believe that Sasquatch has the ability to be interdimensional or a shapeshifter, much like First Nations people would say? Because I tend to think the opposite. I agree with what the First Nations people say.
Well, with them being shapeshifters, not at all. Okay. With them being interdimensional, no. Do they have abilities, and can they manipulate it in such a way that it would appear or would mimic that? Absolutely. And especially when you look at the First Nations, and by the way, when I talk about the First Nations in this case, this applies to any fledgling race or fledgling nationality. Okay. Any of them. Quite frankly, if you're watching somebody and they just all of a sudden disappear, okay, they're going to appear to step out of sync with reality. That's just the way it's going to go. Okay, and whether they step out of the actual physical reality, or whether they modify their vibration, or whether they vanish in front of your eyes, okay, frankly, it's the same thing. You're going to think they disappeared. Okay. Now, quite frankly, point in fact, I met a Sensi sensei or sensei, of ninjutsu. And I kid you not, he was pure human, there was nothing to it, and he could disappear while standing in front of you. Okay, I watched him do it. He vanished from in front of me and ended up behind me. Now, he explained how he did it, but it boiled down to the art of distraction and movement. So, First Nations, I have no doubt they saw the Sasquatch disappear in front of them. But it wasn't a dimensional shift. And can I prove it? Not a snowball's prayer. Will I stand by that? Absolutely.
I don't know. I think there's something more to it. There's a reason, in my opinion, that I'm not saying Sasquatch came from another planet, okay, but I think there is something very, very special about this creature because there is just way too much happening around this. The reason why we haven't found a body or bones, or the reason why we've seen footprints and there's been tracked footprints where all of a sudden the footprints just stop, and this would be in the snow and there's no cliffs, there's no trees, there's nothing around it, just that. Add to the fact that not everybody is that bad of a photographer, yet all the Bigfoot pictures seem to come out blurry for the most part.
Yep.
So there has to be something special about this creature than just being Gigantopithecus.
There absolutely is, but it's not a question of just being, it's a question of people not realizing what Gigantopithecus was capable of. When you're able to modify your vibratory rate, you can also modify your physical density. Doing both, you can become invisible and not leave footprints. As far as the lack of bodies, let us not forget that saying that Bigfoot, Sasquatch, is so connected to Mother Earth. It's one of those neat little secrets that Mother Earth does protect her own. Okay, for the longest time, nobody could figure out where elephants died, because they knew elephants were out there, but nobody could ever find the elephant graveyards. Same issue. Eventually, it'll reveal itself. But is it a question of them being, this is why I say it's not a question of them, and even you said it's not, are they of a different world, but there is a lot more to them than just the idea of they're a big furry, if you will, big hairy pre-Homo sapien. There's a lot more to them.
We may agree to disagree on that, my friend. I'm not going to lie.
That's okay.
We're allowed. We're allowed. This could be our first public spat.
Then it's going to get real boring because I won't argue with you.
All right, Keith, let's move on. I think we could spend a little bit of time on John's question here, and I'm going to get your opinion, and I'd like to fill in on this one and sit in on this one as well. John is asking, I think I'm ready to meet an extraterrestrial, but in reality, I would be terrified to the point of becoming catatonic. What's your thoughts, Keith?
That is absolutely one of the more enlightened perspectives that I've actually heard from many people. Because on the one hand, he's going, I think I'm ready, I'm open-minded enough, and yet he's aware enough to realize that looking at something that is just black and white, not human, is going to be a bit much for him. That shows a level of maturity that most humans don't actually exhibit. Because what it really boils down to is the curiosity is there, but there's a very definitive knowing that curiosity may not be something he can cope with. Now, in all fairness, John, you may surprise yourself when that happens and find that you're not quite as edgy as you think. But the fact that you're aware of it is definitely worthy of a pat on the back.
I always like to ask people, and I've done a blog on this at spacedoutradio.com, about how are you going to react? How are you going to act when this happens? Because when it happened to me, I was not prepared. When I saw the spaceship land, and then 5 days later with Samantha Mowat, I saw the extraterrestrial in the forest, I can tell you this, I was not prepared for what I saw. And, you know, a lot of people out there will say, well, you should have taken a photo, or you should have ran up to it, or you should have tackled it, or, you know, you hear all the ridiculous excuses. But the one thing, Keith, that a lot of people forget is when you have an experience that is so life-transforming, and we hear it a lot from people who have the near-death experience, that it transforms their entire perspective and outlook on life. Well, see a UFO up close, see a Bigfoot up close, see an extraterrestrial up close, because the way you think you would react is not the true way that is going to happen. I would say to at least 99.8% of the people out there. It is emotional, it is stressful, it is scary, it is unbelievable, it is exciting and exhilarating, your heart palpitates. Okay? And Keith, I'm sure you agree with me on all of that.
Absolutely. 100% absolutely.
And the worst part about it is the mental torture that goes along with it, because you're looking at something that you did not expect to see. So, for instance, for me, when I saw the extraterrestrial with Samantha Mowat in the forest, I tried to be calm. I tried to take it all in. I tried to get every mental photograph I possibly could, because I watched this thing for 15, 20 minutes and it didn't move. And it looked right back at me. And the feeling I had inside was like being a child and having a notepad, holding onto a notepad, and every rule your mother, your father, your grandparents, your sisters, your brothers, your aunts, your uncles, your teachers, maybe your ministers have taught you, when you come face to face with something that is not supposed to exist, you realize that everything you have been taught up until that point in life is a lie. It might be a white lie. The person telling you may not know it's a lie. But when you have that life-altering experience, you know that everything you've been taught is not or no longer reality. Keith.
That is absolutely correct. And of course, the real drawback is you can prepare yourself as mentally as you want. When it happens, okay, you will find you react in a way that you may react the way you think, but it doesn't happen. You know, it doesn't very often happen. So your assessment of 99.98 is probably all too accurate. Okay, as Ray Hernandez put it with me, I am, even according to all the research that they've done and the thousands of reports that they've got, as he put it to me, he said, I am the extreme anomaly in their research. The reality between most people is you run it through your head, oh, if I ever run into an alien, I'll react this way. People do the same thing when they get faced with, oh, if I meet a new girl that I like or a new boy that I like, I'm going to do this. Or if I have a problem boss, I'm going to respond this way. And they run these scenarios through their head. But when push comes to shove, what happens is seldom what they plan on.
Mm-hmm. it really comes down with do you think you're going to react? Because the other reality to John's question is a lot of people say, I want to meet one. Well, when you put that energy out there, you really don't know what you are calling in. It could be the most evil of evil. It might be the most benevolent of benevolent. You have to be specific with what you're asking for if you want that contact, correct?
Absolutely. I had one person, I kid you not, they wanted to meet a lichen. And their comment was, I don't care if they want to meet me. I will follow them back to their lair, and I will go in and I will meet them in their house. Now, you look at that and you're like, have you got any idea what you're walking into? Because what you're doing when you come up with this thought of, I really desire to meet an off-worlder, I really want to meet an alien, everybody's listening. And it's not a question of which one you want. If you're just putting out a broadband, like I've heard so many people put out, I don't care which one I meet, I just want to meet one. Well, if you don't care, that is an absolute open invitation for a problem. So being specific, understanding that these people, not all off-worlders, are monitoring what people are thinking or what people are saying. Various races do various different things. The drawback is that it's not just the humans or just the off-worlders that are listening in. Humans are as well. So you really have to understand when I talk about taking responsibility for what you say, for what you think, is absolutely critical. Okay, it's one of these things that you've got to be aware of what you're wishing for. The old saying, be careful what you wish for, you might get it, is way too true and far more accurate than most people think.
Mm-hmm. We have about 4 minutes here, so we're going to try and sneak in one more question here, Keith, if you don't mind.
I don't know.
Watchdog is asking, going back to the whole Bigfoot question, do you think Bigfoot communicates with extraterrestrials?
Absolutely. Very much under the same premise that Bigfoot will try and communicate with some humans. Not many. It's not like they sit down and have, great big get-togethers and parties and what have you. But, some of the off-worlders do the same things to Bigfoot that, the off-worlders are doing to humans. As in, pick them up, tag them, take them home, tag them, take a sample, and put them back. Okay, Bigfoot is another biological entity that evolved on this planet, and therefore is open to, if you will, the same investigative process that the off-worlders use on humans. And in all fairness, that the humans use on other things, from plants to soil samples to other races on this planet. And I'm talking about the decent ones, the ones that are just going in, taking a fluid sample and putting the entity back as best as possible. But are they aware of them? Absolutely. Do they communicate periodically? Absolutely. There is from my standpoint, there's no evidence to the contrary. Now, of course,
right.
We got to understand that lack of evidence does not mean that it proves it the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Let's get one more question in. We got about 90 seconds. This one comes from Stone. What do you think the orange plasma spheres are?
Well, there's three different sources. Basically, you're looking at another entity. Okay, yeah, and that's the easiest way to put it. when we're talking about those spheres, all life is not bipedal. And these are simply another energy pattern. They're another entity, another race that is very aware of the electrokinetic conduits on this planet and are communicating through that. They're looking through it. And you got to remember, humans have a mind-boggling electromagnetic field, very intricate and very involved, that they are witness to. Now that's only one of three. Okay, the second type, sometimes you'll find that all it is literally a plasma, a plasma pocket, if you will. A chemical reaction. Nothing more, nothing less. And the third type is there is at least one race I know of that actually has ships that are about that size. All aliens are not big and green.
Excellent. And on that note, Keith, we're going to hop out for a break here on Spaced Out Radio. We got one more hour with our Keith Andrews, our resident ET expert on Spaced Out Radio.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. If you're listening in on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor and donate today at freedomslips.com. Bill Cardwell has set the password on the SOR Space Travelers Club. Asomatus. Asomatus is your password. I think I got this one correctly. You know what to do if you're an SOR space traveler. Use it wisely. If somebody asks you what it's for, the best response is exactly. It's all in fun. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. You can follow us on TuneIn, and you can download our podcast on iTunes if you want to have a repeat of this one or any other show that we have done. If you're an SOR space traveler or want to know how to join it, go to our website. It's only $5 a month. With that, you get access to private group interviews, access to private sections on our website, and so much more. Give it a try today. Now, we bring back our Keith Andrews for the final time tonight as Every Friday, the first Friday of the month, we have Keith on to discuss the ET experience. Keith, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That works for me as well. I want to get to a question here. This one's been waiting a while here. And let me just find it here now. Of course.
Okay.
The problem is the chat room keeps scrolling, and I got to find it. Dawn is asking, what would be the worst shock? Ghosts, aliens, or Bigfoot?
You know, that depends on the person. I will tell you the most, where it comes to the Bigfoot, when I ran into them, to me that wasn't a shock. I mean, it was a bit of a surprise, but I was in such a terrified state at the time because I was lost. When I ran into Bigfoot, it was a relief. Okay. Where it came to ghosts, well, I died in the hospital, so of course I was more used to seeing dead people than I was live ones. So I'd have to say aliens were the biggest shock. I think the biggest shock of all, though, was when the off-worlder actually saved my life. Instead of, instead of trying to hurt me. Because until that point, the only off-worlders I'd run into were awfully violent individuals. You know, for other people, ghosts are probably going to scare the daylights out of them, because with them being non-corporeal, meaning they are not solid, that scares most people. And as for Bigfoot, well, picture, if you will, running into a bipedal bear. That's almost what it looks like in a very vague fashion. And the sheer size of them will scare a lot of people. But for me, the most shocking was definitively when I had the one step in to help.
I think Bigfoot is curious by nature. I think Bigfoot is a very, very intelligent creature that can read energy, read your ability, whether you are harmful or not. And if it can sense that you are there in peace or there out of curiosity, it will not do anything to you. But if it feels that you are being a little bit meddlesome, I think that's where it gets a little upset.
And on all of that, I will absolutely agree. Just a quick side note before we get lost. Shar asked, she missed the issue of what was not solid. What I meant was, when I said non-corporeal, which is what a ghost is, a non-corporeal entity simply means it is not solid. You had another question there that I know you were trying to get into, but I figured I better catch that.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. We're going to get to Claudia's question. She is asking, if reincarnation is real, couldn't we have been born on other planets? If this is true, are we all off-worlders?
Well, two things. Number one, absolutely, from my experience, reincarnation is definitively real. That being said, how is it possible to have, prior lives on other worlds? The answer is also definitively yes. And as far as does that not make us all off-worlders, well, the answer is definitively no. When you get born on any lifetime, wherever you're born, that is your native land at that point. When you look at, that's the one side of it. If we want to look at it as going a little bit more direct, well, because of the fact that spirits live a heck of a sight longer than humans, and considering I remember before the planet was built, everything on the planet technically came from somewhere else. Well, in all fairness, it evolved here. Now, humans were built on Earth from the planet. So in the initial building of the human genome, it was done on this planet. So if you, as an entity, as a spiritual being, incarnate into a human form, you are definitively a Terran. Okay? So the fact you've got memories, and somebody somewhere along the line asked about, are dreams possibly memories of past lives? And the answer is definitively yes. Some dreams of or of different worlds are memories of a past life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And let's get to Claudia's second part of that question. What if our imagination is a memory of other worlds?
Well, again, that boils down to, that is part of what the imagination does. When the mind remembers something, when the subconscious remembers something, the imagination figures out how to explain it in some fashion. And sometimes those memories that are being remembered are past life, just a snippet of a past life, and your mind just fills in the blanks. Okay, and that's where some of the confusion comes from. But let's understand that all imagination is, the better portion of imagination is just that. Okay, it is just your imagination, your ability to think beyond the norm, to try and do something that you haven't done. Everything is not necessarily really confusing, although we can make it that way.
Keith, do you then think, if we stick with Claudia's question, that if reincarnation is real and we've been on other worlds, is that just soul travel, lifetime to lifetime, or is that something that is just all intertwined, where you may spend one life here, another life in some other solar system, and come back? Because wouldn't that be a whole part of what we would call the God particle?
Ultimately, you're basically correct. Here's the best way I can explain it. Now, I don't need specifics. You're driving a particular car right now. Like you yourself, you've got a particular car that you drive right at this point, right?
I do.
Now, before you got your current car, you had another vehicle. And before you had that vehicle, you had a vehicle prior to that. That is the same principle as reincarnation. This lifetime, you're driving a vehicle that is human. Last lifetime, you may have been driving a vehicle that was a gray. The lifetime before, you may have been driving a vehicle that was a Vulcan. And I don't mean the guy with pointy ears, I mean the djembes. Okay, so when you look at that, that's the first part. That's where reincarnation on different planets comes into play. Now, as far as the God particle goes, we look at two factors. One, yes, okay. When you look at the God particle, basically, and I don't know how they managed to do this, but scientists about 20 years ago figured out that when a body dies, when somebody passes away, when you take into consideration the fluid loss, the gas loss that happens at the time the person dies, when you take into consideration all of that, the muscle and the bone weight, there is still a 2-ounce difference in the weight. There's 2 ounces that is not accountable. Now, for lack of a better way of putting it, that would be the weight of the soul. Now, when you take a look at all of the religious teachings, pretty much they all say the same thing, that everybody came from God, from Buddha, from whatever. And if somebody wants to complain about my using one term or another, let them. The reality is this. The energy in a soul is too strong for the entire energy to be put inside the human genome, especially in its current poisoned state. So what ends up happening is the soul breaks down, and this is where soul fragments and where twin flames and where soulmates and all of these terms and all of these realities happen to be words for the same thing. Okay, it's because the soul breaks down, and and when I talk about it breaking down, I mean it deliberately separates into smaller and smaller parts, so the energy can be slowed down. Kind of like if you think about it, trying to run the water from the Nile River, or for people in Canada from Niagara Falls, try running that water through a water hose. If you don't slow it down, you're not going to get it through the water hose. And that is ultimately why, as the, so to speak, God particle goes, why it is broken down as much as it has. Like why it's been pulled apart, if you will.
Shar has a question in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. She is asking, have you ever heard of people cloaking?
Yes. And it's done in much the same way. I mentioned it earlier where I actually knew a sensei that teaches ninjutsu. Well, used to teach. At this point, he's probably dead. But he could vanish in front of you. And I mean, I'm pretty, I like to think I'm pretty observant. And he disappeared right before my eyes and showed up 10 feet behind me. My son has literally been looking at me and lost track of me standing right there in front of him. Okay, and I've had that happen from a number of people, or I'll just show up beside them. And it boils down to, it really is an issue of, yes, some humans have developed the capacity to either modify, and most of the time it's subconsciously generated, but they modify the appearance of what's going on so people just don't notice them. Essentially, that's what cloaking really boils down to.
John is, yeah, absolutely. John is asking, and he's one of our new listeners, so forgive him for not hearing this story. He's asking if you've ever met a Pleiadian.
Absolutely. I've met both, and I certainly don't, there's certainly no shame in asking, and welcome to the show. I've run into both the Pleiadian hybrids and the true Pleiadians. Now, there's a whole lot of, shall we say, disagreement in certain fields. Pleiadians, the true Pleiadians, are translucent blue, as in you can literally see through their skin, and they are bald. They also, because of the way their body works, they cannot survive on Earth unassisted. The atmosphere on Earth will quite literally kill them, which is a problem in their eyes. And, I can see their point. Pleiadian hybrids, quite frankly, yeah, I have talked at length with them. They are bluish in nature. Now, there's a neat little concept out there, colloidal silver, that people keep saying, oh, that's all it is. Which colloidal silver does happen, does cause people to turn blue. The thing with Pleiadian hybrids is that their pigmentation is fluid, meaning it doesn't stay in a static position. Okay, when you watch it, when you actually see it, not only can you see the fluid move, the pigmentation move, but when I shook his hand, you could feel the pigmentation move. Okay, and that's the neat little issue of it. But yeah, I've absolutely met both. There's also this, some people have said Pleiadians are tall blondes. Well, no, the tall blondes are not Pleiadian. They're actually Nordic. However, some of the Nords that have come through here came through the Pleiadian system in the first place. And if somebody says, where are you from? Much like, where did you come from? Much like if somebody asks me when I go out to the conference out in Portland, Maine, people say, where do you come from? I'll go, I'm from Kelowna. But the reality is I was born in Comox. Okay, so, where do you want to start? But that's the true Pleiadians are, like I said, they are translucent blue, and they're natural born healers. They are the ones that really go out of their way to try and put things back to right, if you will, when possible.
I want to get to a question here, if you don't mind, and this is my own question for you.
Okay.
We have a lot of debate when you are on. Almost every show that you are on, we have a lot of debate whether or not, aliens are good, aliens are bad, they're indifferent, they prefer applesauce over their pork chops rather than horseradish. You know what I'm saying? We have a lot of debate on everything that is going on. So for the public to know, if they are an experiencer, how do they tell if it's a positive or negative species? And let's say they're not energy readers, okay? They're not people who can pick up on the perception of this is a good situation, this is a bad situation. I'm talking the normal, everyday public, 9 to 5 or retired. They're trying to just live their life day in and day out, and they are unsure of what is happening to them. How do they tell benevolency from malevolency?
Well, that is going to be a real challenge. It's a fabulous question. The benevolent ones usually have a bearing of trying to get the person to relax. Okay, sometimes they're clumsy, sometimes not so much, but it's usually a case of their physical demeanor is usually one of trying to get the person, trying to reassure the person in various ways. Like, for instance, when they go to handle them, they will do their best to handle them gently or to guide them where they're going. If they're, they'll try and give them some sense of, don't worry, relax, we're not going to hurt you, go to sleep, whatever. Any one of these. Think of the various different ways that you try and get a child to relax when a child is having a nightmare. Okay, the benevolent ones are very much like that on the whole. Now, when you're looking at a neutral one, they literally don't. There's virtually no talking. There's virtually no effort to do anything to make you feel better. Quite often, they'll just simply administer another shot of whatever, whether it's a needle, whether it's a blast of light or a blast of sound, but to knock you out. You start to wake up and there's no effort to say anything. You just get put back to sleep. Those are true scientists. Okay. And they're just there. It's not a question if they don't care. They will be as careful as they can, but it's careful from a clinical standpoint, not from an emotional one. The malevolent ones are going to be forceful. They're going to bodily move you wherever they will. They're going to forcibly take you wherever they choose to. There's going to be no concern with your mental state while you're waiting for them to do whatever. Okay, you could be screaming at the top of their lungs, and if they're malevolent, they may well be looking at you and enjoying it, and quite literally doing things to see if they can get a louder scream out of you because they want to know just exactly how, how you're going to react. But is there a black and white, shall we say, rule book? No. You really have to picture it, if you will, like I said, how you would deal with a child that's having a nightmare. Benevolent ones will try and calm you down before they carry forward. And if they figure, and I have heard cases where somebody was so distraught, they said, no, I can't do this. And the race turned around and put them back. They didn't do any more. It was literally a case of the examination was terminated, and they returned the person to where they were. That's the easiest way I can put it.
Right. And that makes sense. I got a comment question here from Stone in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. She says, I saw a light being reptilian, which surprised me, as that was the last thing I even thought possible. This was just last week, while a friend was having a double night terror. Could you tell me anything about these? And yes, it was translucent blue, like you said.
Well, two things: the night terror, the light being, the reptilian light being. Do they exist? Yes, obviously. Translucent blue, the nice little part there. If they are doing now with Pleiadians, they actually have the ability to project themselves elsewhere. We were talking earlier about, can they manifest, by thought. Now, my suspicion is that what you were dealing with, because some reptilians are known to interact with Pleiadians, because Pleiadians are healers, and some of the races are interested in that side of it. So what you may have been dealing with there, and it's essentially my best assessment, is a Pleiadian bringing a reptilian with them so that they could see, well, in this case, you. The reptilian itself probably was not. It may have been, but quite honestly, I haven't run into it before. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but was probably a rendition brought forward so that the reptilian could see what the Pleiadian was up to. What was going on with Stone. Now, as far as the double night terror goes, quite frankly, just knowing that the friend was having a double night terror, there are so many different variables there without something specific. And I mean, she's more than welcome. Stone, you're more than welcome to contact me outside of the show, because I quite seriously need more details than that to tell you what's going on with the night terror. Okay, because there's so many things that can cause that.
We'll move on. Yeah, we'll move on to another question here. This one comes from Cog. He's asking, does alien life feed on cosmic rays?
Only some. In other words, there are some races that quite literally that's how they eat, which makes them pretty much harmless. Because when they're, a race that feeds on cosmic rays doesn't have any use for corporeal interaction. I mean, it'll certainly watch, but yes, those do exist.
We'll get to Mario's question. Mario is asking, Keith, is it possible some humans don't know they're reptilian? I know some reptilians hide behind a human facade. How do you see them?
Well, number one, is it possible? Absolutely, providing, of course, we are referring to if they are reptilian hybrid. It is definitively possible that they don't know. Okay, there's a couple of ways that you can tell, like that they could tell, but the individual, without those pieces of information, quite frankly, they may well have no idea any more than somebody may know whether or not they've got African genetics. Whether or not part of their ancestry was African or Chinese or whatever. Because if you're always the same way and you look human, the saying is, if you look like a duck, you quack like a duck, you smell like a duck, the odds are you're a duck. If what you're looking at in the mirror looks human and you've got nothing to work with, they may well not have any clue at all they're a hybrid. Now, the issue of a true reptilian looking human, well, that's one of those issues that goes up for debate every time. And I've yet to see a reptilian hybrid, or not a hybrid, rather, a reptilian shapeshifter. Okay, I've seen chameleons, but not a true metabolic shapeshifter that can look like a human and not know it. Okay, that side of it, if they're true reptilian, they're not going to look like a human. But hybrids, it is very probable that they don't know that they're hybrids. And, if you think of it this way, most people that adopt a child, at least years ago, I don't know what it's like now, but decade when I was a kid, children, unless you told them they were adopted, didn't know they were adopted. It just, because it didn't stand out.
Follow-up question from Mario. So how do you spot a hybrid? Humans pose as a reptilian?
Well, no. If you're dealing with a human reptilian hybrid, you'll notice a couple of things right off the bat. One, their meat intake will be right through the roof. Okay, because with reptilians, in all of the reptilians that I know of, in every race I've dealt with, they are heavy on the carnivorous side. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to eat raw meat or anything, but it does mean that they will eat a very high ratio of meat to vegetables. Now, do understand something very critical. Everybody that likes meat and doesn't like vegetables is not a reptilian. That does not automatically make them a hybrid. You'll also find that there's a real disconnect from that same person between what is considered normal human behavior and abnormal. They quite often will be very backwards to it. Depending on the race, it can get really confusing. Because some reptilian races are excessively violent, some are excessively calm. But there will be the similarity is that there's a complete disconnect between there's a complete disconnect between what normal people see as normal and what a hybrid does, depending on how well they've been trained. And if they don't know they're a hybrid, you can bet your bottom dollar they weren't trained. Mm-hmm. Okay. They're being, at that point, they're being dropped into a human environment to learn the culture. The other thing that is quite often the case is, more often than not, reptilians are either, like reptilian hybrids, are either hyper-focused, like when they look at something, their eyes just plain won't move, or they're completely scattered where they just won't sit still. And again, any one of these does not indicate that that person is an unknown hybrid. There are many humans that have that as well. The biggest problem is that hybrids feel different, and that's not something you can physically see.
Watchdog is asking, when you were talking about feeding, how do ETs survive? What do they eat?
Well, that sort of depends on which race. I mean, some of them are vegetarians, some of them eat live meat, some of them eat, some of them, quite frankly, eat, well, politely put, fecal matter. Some absorb energy straight out of the atmosphere. Like the number of different ways that people, that I call them people, but other races eat, is as varied as there are races. Almost.
Mm-hmm. Bill Cardwell has a question in the SOR Space Travelers. He is asking, night after night I go outside to feed my horses, and I always take a moment to look up at the night sky. I ask the universe to please show me some sign that we are not alone. I've never seen any sign from above. What am I doing wrong?
Well, number one, you're looking too hard. Number two, the biggest problem is you've asked for some sign. Take a look in the chat room. Take a look at the number of reports around the world, from every walk of life. Take a look at the people that have gone through it and said, and I'm talking the uncounted hundreds of thousands, well, frankly, millions of people that have said, we are not alone. That is a sign. Now, the fact that you haven't seen a physical rendition, there's any number of possibilities there. One of the biggest ones, of course, is depending on where you're living, it may not be shall we say, a place that they frequent, per se. Okay. But it's also an issue of if you watch the stars, you'll see some that are moving, and they'll do something that is just weird, that just doesn't fit. You also have to understand, if you don't know what you're looking at, if you spot a satellite going in one direction, and this one I couldn't tell you, but everything moves in certain directions, even the ones traveling in a straight line, there are some satellites that don't travel on a pattern that satellites travel on. Now, you'd have to talk to somebody that knows the directions as well as knows the satellite trajectories to know that one. But I was with somebody one day that we were looking at it, and I says, well, that looks like it probably is a satellite. And he looks at me and he goes, except it's not traveling any known pattern. It's going across the lines, and not perpendicular. It wasn't going perpendicular. It was going at an angle across them. He says, there's no way that's a planet, that is a satellite, because it's just not on any orbital feed.
It does happen. It does happen for sure. Claudia is asking, is there a frequency you can pick up on or look in the eyes who may be an off-worlder and yet look completely human?
The answer to that is a very definitive yes. Now, unfortunately, can I teach people that one? Not that I've figured out how to do, but then I haven't found anybody that's actually that interested. And it's not like they're prolific. It's not like hidden off-worlders, if you will, or hidden hybrids are an extreme number. But yeah, there is a definitive shift in the energy. When I look at somebody, quite frankly, I can, and it's not just a case of looking at, they can walk by and I can feel if there's something off with the energy as compared to what a human feels like as compared to what others feel like.
I want to get back to Bill's question about he never sees anything above. And I'd like to add something to that, if you don't mind. And basically what that is basically stating that when you're putting the intention above, how specific do you have to be with that intention, and how often does that intention take Or how long does it take to finally get that intention revealed to what you want to see?
Well, the number one, as far as how specific you have to be, you have to understand the real big problem when we're talking about above to the universe doesn't have an above. So it's got nothing to work with. Okay, now, you can go, well, I'm talking, therefore it refers to me. But the universe doesn't recognize the individual, it recognizes the vibration. That would be the first problem. The second issue is that you have to, again, you have to be specific about what you're looking for, because in order to manifest it, you got to have a clear picture of what you're manifesting. How long it takes, quite seriously, depends entirely on the, on the individual, if you will. Okay, in other words, on the strength of the belief, if you will. That's because if you're going, and I realize in Bill's case, he's dead serious. He really does desire to see one. Okay, so that's not in question here. But on the whole, many people will say, just kind of in passing, it would be really neat. In Bill's case, it's a very heartfelt, very in-depth intention. Yeah, I really want the physical proof, as it were.
Let's get to Claudia's question. She is asking, I already asked that one. I apologize, Claudia. Actually, it's a follow-up to her question about frequency pickup. What is the first sign someone is an off-worlder?
They feel funny. Now, I'm presuming she's referring to if, from my standpoint, from their standpoint, they may not know. So it's either they don't know or they do know, either way. But from my standpoint, that person will feel different than other people. Okay, that's my first indication right there. That's why I take the second look. Sometimes it's because of a feeling. Sometimes it's because of, technically, it could be a sound or a smell that catches me. But ultimately, it really boils down to they feel, for lack of a better term, funny. Then I go looking for the specifics as to why. And rest assured, children are easier to spot. The gifted children, the off-world children, are far easier to spot than adults that have figured out how to behave a little bit more readily. But that's the easiest way to spot it. That's the first sign.
Do you buy all these theories, Keith, that are out there, and the tinfoilers wear their hats pretty tightly on this topic when it comes to the idea that government officials are actually reptilians? The Queen's a reptilian, they do human sacrifices. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't believe a lot of that crap. I really don't, and I think that's taking it a little bit too far. I don't think I'm being naive on that. But the fear-mongering that goes on with reptilians and that, everybody from every president to the Queen to Vladimir Putin is reptilian. Are you buying any of that?
Not unless it gets a lot cheaper than what they're trying to feed it. I can tell you where that whole thing comes from, but no. Like I keep asking people, what would any off-world race do coming here to screw up the political system? Why would they bother? Okay, this whole issue of the reptilians being the leaders and being the governmental officials and the royal family and what have you, I'm a very firm believer that comes out of the 70s during a neat little series that came out called V.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic movie.
Yes, it was.
It was, and the series was incredible in my eyes. However, as far as it being all of these people are aliens and everybody in power is a reptilian, it's a crock. I believe that's a polite way to put it.
So how do you go about disbanishing this? I want to use the word stupidity, and maybe that is the correct term, of people saying, that everybody in the political realm is an alien. For instance, I know people who have been elected, even on a local official stage, whether it's mayoral or something along those lines. And
right.
Frankly, I know for a fact they're not reptilian. They're not any kind of hybrid trying to gain political power because that is their path and that is their mantra as a reptilian. I mean, where does the bullshit stop? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, quite honestly, the way I deal with it is quite simple. If I'm dealing with somebody that is asking me point blank, this leader is a reptile, right? The first thing I ask them is, quite literally, let's use logic. These people have come millions of light years, or thousands of light years, or maybe only a few dozen light years, but they've got the capacity to come over here. Why are they going to spend their time trying to screw up the political system to take control of a backwater bunch of hillbillies? Why not just start wiping people out? If you want to take control, you don't need to worry about trying to do it over the polls. If let's face it, if any one of the presidents if they were a reptilian and they wanted to take control of the world, of that area, I want to become the president. Well, for crying in a water bucket, they got computers that will get them all the way here. You think they're going to have a problem hacking into a pocket system to change the vote so they can win it by everybody voting? No.
I agree. You know what? This is the way I look at it. This is as easily as I can break down. You can have the nicest person as your neighbor. If you live in an apartment complex or you live in a townhouse complex or whatever you live in. And the minute they get on that damn strata council, all of a sudden they are their second coming of Joseph Stalin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Power in politics has a very, very strong pull on people. It changes people's attitudes, it changes people's ways, it changes their belief system because they feel they have to flex that political muscle as much as they possibly can because they've been elected or acclimated and they are in power. So I'm glad to hear that you're not buying into this whole crap about the Queen is reptilian, the prime ministers, the presidents of the world are reptilian. Thank you for clarifying that. That actually makes me feel a lot better. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I'm glad to help. I find it, amazingly comical in some ways, although, in all fairness, your term stupidity does apply. Stupid being you know better than you do it anyway. The logic behind it just completely baffles me because I'm thinking, if I'm trying to take over a world, the political system that humans use, number one, it's not united. Therefore, you can't take over the world by taking over one country. Number two, by doing it that way, if you don't want to damage the planet, well, taking over only one country is going to cause a war. Okay, mankind is a violent little young species. They're temperamental. So if you're going to take the world, you can't do it by the political system. Because some other genius is going to do the same thing. Now, of course, we have the other side of that, where you'll have the members, possibly of your audience, possibly not, that will go, well, isn't it possible that they're just playing games to keep everybody at bay? To keep everybody off edge? And the answer to that is technically it's possible, but to what end? It hasn't worked for humans. Why would it work for aliens?
The argument just kind of baffles me sometimes. It really, truly does, and I find it extremely frustrating that, the paranoia that has been put out there by whoever it may be absolutely just seems to ruin everything about it. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And, I realize people are searching for answers, and they're searching for ways to try and figure out what the heck they are doing in life, so on and so forth. But at some point, you have to screw your head on to the neck a little bit tighter just to make sure you get the whole point that you're not being pulled, screwed over. You're not being, manipulated. There's no reptilians in government. So we have to start giving our heads a shake.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, I'm just scanning through here, and John Connor in SOR has asked a question. Well, I don't know if it's a question, but he says, I sometimes wonder, though, if these ET races are so advanced, why they would need to eat meat. They should be able to synthesize any nutrient they require. Well, some of them can. But the reality is, if you think on that logic, humans should be able to realize, they're so advanced, they should realize that shooting each other does not bring peace. Or using nuclear power does not necessarily mean that you can kill more people. It's actually a power source. The current situation, people keep trying to stop the oil production. And they want to stop it from being moved around, only you'd think that humans would figure out that the oil industry is necessary, and getting it from one place to another is critical. And it doesn't matter what nationality you are. The reality is, oil is used in virtually everything people make. Okay, right from clothing all the way to the vehicles. So you stop the oil production, and, well, you could be living in the Dark Ages again. It's not a question of evolution, of mental evolution that makes them off-worlders. The issue of eating is a question of biological evolution. And that takes a lot longer. And those people, on the whole, don't deal with humans because they're so far beyond them that there's no interest. It's kind of like most humans won't bother looking at an amoeba. They don't know about them. They won't look at them because they have no bearing.
So let's spend the next 5 minutes, because that's all we have left, my friend, talking about how to make positive contact. I'd like to get into that because I think Bill would really like to make contact one way or another, or see something fly across the sky. Let's take him through it. Let's take 5 minutes and walk everybody through this on if they want to make positive contact or see a UFO fly by, how they would do it.
Well, the first step, and that's actually an excellent way to tie this off. The first thing you have to do is, and just briefly from Bill's standpoint, understand, Bill, I'm going to say stuff that to you may seem either normal or you've already done it. This has to include the rest of the audience as well, which I'm sure you understand. But the first thing you have to do is accept the fact that, and I do mean accept the fact that we are not alone, that Earth is not the only place that life has grown, so that you can let go of the idea that there is some explanation that it will fit. Because until you do that, and you have to simply in your heart go, no, this is not a question of I need proof it exists. Somebody earlier in here made the comment that in their eyes, seeing is believing. The reality is believing is seeing. Okay, if you don't believe it's possible, you're not going to see it. Now, from the general standpoint, you have to accept the fact that we're not alone, that they are out there. And number two, you've got to stay focused on the idea that when you see them, they are going to show up in a way that you are comfortable with. Okay, so that you essentially put out the energy that this recognition, this event, is not going to shock the daylights out of you. Okay, it's just simply going to be an issue of, it's there, it's something I know I can't rationalize around, and it's something that I will recognize as a true non-human event. And I qualify that as non-human because not everything that's out there that you're likely to see is necessarily off-world. I deliberately separate both, the UFOs, the ETs, as off-worlders and ancient races because they're two different things. They're two different qualifiers. One originates off the planet, the other one originates on the planet. Now, the other thing that you've got to do is you've got to, when I talk about look with all of your senses, we're not talking about just seeing something. What you may get is a sound that doesn't add up. It may be a smell that you get, or it may be just literally a feeling that comes across. Okay, so from that standpoint, you do have to look at accepting the fact when you're so to speak calling out for it, and calling out is a thought process. It's not a question of needing to scream at the top of your lungs. Sometimes some people have had luck with a flashlight. Now, they say it's with a flashlight. My own personal opinion on it, to be able to see it from orbit, my guess is they weren't using a flashlight. So it really does boil down to, for the most part, the feeling that goes out is what gets picked up. Like I said, some people have had luck with cyclic lighting to get their attention. But for the most part, it's a question of listening with all of your senses. I think that, and for pity's sakes, especially if you're looking for something in the sky, you've got to get to a place that does not have a bunch of artificial light. And hence why mountaintops, out in the middle of the field, that sort of thing. You've got to be someplace where where it's quiet, where you're not going to hear the sounds of civilization, or where there's little enough light that you can actually, as far as the optical side goes, see the lights that you're looking for without, trying to spot different lights when you're right near an airport is going to be a challenge, because unless you know the airport lights and the way that they work, it can get awfully distracting. So the less distraction that you've got, the better off you are, if you will.
And on that note, Keith, we're going to wrap things up here on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We wrap up another week and another month with you, my friend. It's gone. Poof. It's over.
Back, eh?
Absolutely. It went quick. Went absolutely quick.
Well, and I do want to thank you for having me again. And just to reiterate to people, if they're trying to get a hold of me, because I know there's questions people have, quite frankly, you can contact me through Facebook. You can contact me, innervoiceenterprises@yahoo.ca. Both of those methods work. And I'm sure if you ask Dave, I do give you permission to give out my contact info so they can get a hold of me.
I can do that for you, my friend. Thank you. I only got about 60 seconds left. I got to wrap this thing up. Our Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month, right here on Spaced Out Radio tomorrow night and Sunday. James Tyson and Elizabeth Anglin are in the cabin for a Spaced Out weekend. If you're Canadian, have a safe and happy Thanksgiving with you, your family, your loved ones. And if you don't have any, you know what? Go to a movie. Spend some time with some friends or your dog or whatever makes you happy. In my life, it's you people out here. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, follow us on TuneIn, and as well, you can download this show or any of our shows on iTunes. We'll take care. We'll talk to you very soon. We are out.